Now, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our final session of the day. It's always a bit challenging. I know it's been a very long day. There's always a lot going on at ITB, but this is why these two gentlemen are even more motivated and even more pleased to be here with all of you to give their two keynotes on the industry outlook and the importance of indices for market development. So I'm just really glad that you're still joining us. If you have just joined for this session, my name is Marianna Evenstein, and we all know that staying ahead of market trends is really important for businesses and also for investors, and this is why indices are so important. And we're going to hear about how they can be used for things like analyzing market dynamics or anticipating shifts in the industry and also guiding strategic decision making. So it's not just numbers, it's not just lists. This is also really crucial, especially in times of uncertainty. And these two gentlemen are going to give us a few very valuable perspectives on all of these topics. First is Stephen Dutton, right to my left. He's the Insight Research Manager at Euromonitor. And also, if you've been on this stage earlier in the day, you know him already, Dr. Markus, who's the Managing Partner at Dr. Fried & Partner. So, gentlemen, I hand over to you for your presentations.
Yes. Thank you very much, Marianna. And as I'm used, I will start the session, but only with a quick introduction. So we decided you are going to switch, but I do it one time. So very quickly to explain why are we staying here. I think at the end of the day, we will have a little surprise for each of you, and you are invited to have a party with us because we are celebrating today the introduction of a very specific part of the index world. So this is what we are going to show at the end of the stage session over here. Now what we decided just to make it a little bit different than just in a panel discussion, we have three big items we want to discuss today. This is one, the performance tracking and ex post analysis. There Stephen and myself will explain a little bit what do we have in the market, what are quite interesting examples, how to track markets and insights with this kind of information. We have the market sentiments and behavior shifts. This is the second part. And the third part will be the early indicators and the long-term forecasts. So this is mainly what we are talking about within the next 20 minutes. Stephen, I think you may start and just tell a little bit about performance.
Yes, thanks very much. Thanks, everybody, for sticking this out. I know it's the end of a long day. We're all a little tired, but we're excited about some of the data that we're going to share. If you're not familiar with Euromonitor, we're a global market intelligence firm. Our bread and butter is market sizing and forecasting, and we do track the travel industry. So we'll be sharing some of those data now, and hopefully I can bring sort of a strategic element to this discussion that we're going to have. So this first sort of segment that we discussed that we'll get into is about performance tracking and ex post analyses. I thought I'd bring to the table sort of what our bread and butter really is market sizes by different travel segments, and that's what we're going to be looking at in this chart. And so what you can see here are different, so the sales over time of different travel segments. So it's things like, well, I can't really read it here, it's a little bit far away, but basically it's overall travel compared with things like hotels and short-term rentals, airlines, et cetera. So all the different major segments within travel indexed to 2019 spending levels. So that's our starting point on the left side of that chart. So you can see all of those segments. So relative performance since 2019, basically. All of those segments dipped. You can imagine that was the effects of the pandemic. And you can see them all slowly starting to grow back. Now, the big takeaway for looking at here, you'll notice that most of those lines crossed that 2019 mark in 2024 or 2025. And so what that means is, good news, we can consider ourselves as an industry fully recovered. That means any kind of growth and this trajectory that continues into the future is going to be record sales from here on out. That's an overwhelmingly positive thing for our industry, and that's really great. But a couple of points to make. The first thing is that the travel market of today looks a lot different than the travel market of 2019, and that's important. So even though we've hit that mark, we're not the same travel market that we used to be, and we'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. Another thing you'll see an outlier here is that that blue line on the top, that's short-term rentals. that specific segment was dealing with a lot of sort of unique pandemic-related trends, digital native companies kind of leading that segment, a lot of blended travelers mixing leisure with work, simultaneously. So there was a lot of things kind of boosting that growth there. And you also, it's really hard to see, but one line that isn't recovered yet is business travel. There are a couple of things to consider there. One is that business travel, obviously a lot of our meetings have shifted to Teams and Zoom and all of that, and there's a lot of sort of stickiness to that behavior. So I think a lot of companies have sort of rethought some of their strategies. But another problem is that the global economic situation for a lot of big companies right now is a bit challenging. And so looking about shrinking budgets and pulling back where they can. And so we're not expecting business travel to recover fully at this stage. But the other parts and all of leisure travel and travel overall has, which is great news. Now, if we look at if we want to understand how the travel market is different now compared to where it was in 2019, a good way to do this is to understand how consumers are actually spending in a destination when they take a trip. That's what we're looking at the pie chart. It basically covers all of the different ways that a consumer might spend their money on a trip in a destination. The big buckets here, you might guess, are on food and dining and on shopping. And then we're tracking other smaller segments like attractions, experiences, mobility, wellness, et cetera. And then there's a catch-all for the other types of spending as well. Now, if you look on the right-hand side, what we're looking at are all of those segments, but the expected growth over the next 5 years. And so what we're seeing here are experiences. So that spending in a destination going towards experiences is the fastest growing space for that share of wallet when people are taking a trip. And that's followed by attractions and then followed by food and dining, which you can imagine is part of the experience too. So what we're seeing here is that consumers are thinking about what they want from a trip differently. And this is not about growth at all costs, the sort of quick city hop type of experiences that we remember from 2019. We're seeing consumers starting to slow down when they take a trip. They're spending their time more meaningfully in a destination, and it's reflected how they're spending here. And if we look quickly now at just sort of performance over the next 5 years, the coming 5 years of different travel segments, you see that imprinted here too. Rail is the big winner. People traveling by train, that is the fastest growing segment in travel over the next 5 years. That is an obvious reflection of people traveling, within the region, trying to understand their own backyard a little bit better, wanting to explore kind of new spaces, and rail really fitting nicely into that. But it's followed by, guided tours, attractions, museums and cultural tours. It's hard to read, but they're all basically the next 4 or 5 different segments are all reflected about, again, the way consumers want to spend more meaningfully in a destination. That's a big shift, and I think it's really important to understand how the market looks like it's different than 2019.
Yes, as Stephen just jumped in very deeply, I will just explain a little bit about performance tracking and an ex-post analysis. Just to explain, I'm owner of the management company, management consulting, Frieden Partner, but as well as also on the travel data and analytics team. So therefore, what we see on the next slide is exactly what we are collecting of kind of data when we are talking about the weekly sales development in German travel market. So what we are measuring is a weekly pot of data coming from all the sales organizations in Germany. So this is entirely 2,000 sales offices, and we have some 25, 30 online platforms giving us their booking data. And what we are doing is we are evaluating these data weekly about the current booking situation. What we then do is we try to have an ex-post analysis, and we see how the current bookings are running compared to last year. So, and this is exactly what we see on the next slide. This is the booking data for 1 year. What we see in the dark blue is 2024 compared to 2023, and it's an index, number, a figure. What's quite interesting, behind this index, all the volume of the entire tourism market in Germany is set down, and we just produce it on a weekly base on this index base. When we come to the next slide, we will see, we have a look at the market sentiment and behavioral shifts. And Stephen, it's your turn to get deeper in this.
Great, yeah. So let's take a look at consumers and consumer preferences and how that's changed. So for this, we've got a really nice Voice of the Consumer survey series. It's basically a huge project where we're asking tens of thousands of consumers in all major global markets different aspects about their lifestyles and how that informs their shopping preferences. And we can zoom into how that impacts travel. But I'm actually going to start by zooming out and just talk a little bit about what's happening to consumers at the moment in general, because that also informs how they spend on travel. 72% of global consumers feel that the cost of everyday goods is going up. I think you probably all agree with that. We're all consumers too. We see how that cost pressure is impacting our own wallets. That's been happening for years with inflationary effects for various reasons. But what it means for the consumer is that they've had to decide what they're going to spend on, moving forward with crunched wallets. What are they trading out of? What are they spending less on? That's happened over a series of years. The good news is 40% of consumers now who say they're concerned about the rising cost of goods are still preferring to actually spend money. That's a nice shift that we're seeing recently because they're tired of sort of that self-imposed austerity and looking to bring a little joy back into their lives and looking to shop where they can. And 45% of consumers actually prefer branded goods to non-branded alternatives. And the reason for that is because brands do a good job, generally speaking, of communicating their value through their brand. And so when we think about what consumers are spending on now, and we can think about how that's related to travel, it's all about communicating your value as a service or a product, either through your brand or otherwise. And that's the key now to getting consumers to spend when they're having a hard time finding ways to do so. Now, the good news for travel is that travel is inherently fun. It's something that people say again and again they do want to prioritize their spending on, and that's why we see the travel market doing so well and being so positive. But there's more to it than that, and I think if you want to get ahead in travel, it's really critical to understand some of those nuances. And we talked about experiences as being one way that we see really across the board consumers looking at. The experience side of travel is a great way to communicate your value in travel. So bringing that experiential element in through your offerings, through your products, or just generally, I think is a great thing. So that's what we're showing here in this. We're looking at select markets in Europe and understanding that there is a lot of people saying that experiences are really critical to what they're looking for right now. But I also want to highlight here that not every market is the same. Not every consumer in every country is the same. There are nuances, and it's good to look a little further into that. So for example, you can see here Germany, consumers say consistently that they want experiences, but at the same time, they're not willing to spend more for those experiences. So that can really impact the way you create a value proposition to German consumers. Maybe by offering more experiences into your mass market offerings, having that sort of value for money proposition. Contrast that with the United Kingdom. There, people are saying they want experiences, but they're also saying that they're willing to spend more for experiences as well. So for that market, maybe tailoring your products to say, okay, more niche experiences or more upmarket experiences might actually resonate really well. In the Netherlands, you see more than other markets that they want curation and personalization. That's a whole other element of the experience. And so looking more deeply into what consumers are asking for can help you get ahead, can help you embrace the experiential element that is really sweeping through the entire market right now. And just a final word, we talked a little bit about this earlier in a panel and just in the last panel that was here, but I want to focus on Gen Z for just a minute. Gen Z, we've been talking about for a while now. It's a target audience, obviously. The important thing to know about Gen Z right now is that they're starting to have real buying power in the market. So that's important for us to know. Because we're starting to see them actually starting to spend money. They have jobs, they're starting to spend money, et cetera. But they're a very unique kind of consumer profile. Their formative years were spent during the pandemic, really online, in somewhat of an isolated situation. So it's interesting to see what they want from travel right now. 31% of Gen Z consumers say that they actually want to book those travel experiences in the store. That's really incredible to me. You think, okay, they're digital natives, they're used to interacting online and use that in the shopping experience, but really they're also looking for connection, and I think it's good to understand that. 67% of Gen Z are willing to pay more for relaxation. That's a critical thing, relaxation for Gen Z, for young consumers starting to get into the workforce right now. That's a buzzword. It's something to understand, too. That's more than half of them saying that. And 51% of them are saying that they're willing to spend more than 30% on top for sustainable travel features. Another really critical thing to understand about Gen Z is that they're really values-oriented. That's another great way to communicate the value that they need to spend more for your product or your service. Values orientation, regardless of what it is again, a really important piece of that. And sustainability, regardless of what's being said in the news right now about sustainability or taking a back seat, well, 51% of Gen Z consumers are willing to spend 30% more for a sustainable feature in a travel context. That's a considerable thing to understand.
So first of all, I just want to say a very warm welcome to the new group of for the audience. Thank you having you here. You can stay sitting wherever you want. I think no one is coming anymore. So therefore, thank you to have you here. Just a quick look into the market sentiments and behavioral shifts. So what is interesting for us over here? As a Freedom partner, we are working with the Tourism Sales Climate Index with a monthly measurement of market trends. So, and what we are doing here, we also take out from the market, from the sales travel market, by a monthly survey. Since 2005, all the information we put into this index. It captures trends and sentiments in the German travel solution distribution market, and it assesses the current business situation and future expectations. And this is where I'm quite proud of. As you see, it's since 2005. I just was thinking about this index this 25 to 20 years ago, in terms of doing something like in Germany, well known, the IFO index. It's a very simple index. You only have very less questions, but you see so much how the market is driving. So what we see is we first of all get the survey done with the German travel agencies and as well also tour operators and other companies in the market. It's a monthly survey, as I said, and just having a look what is coming out from such a survey. Yeah, next slide. You can switch. Yeah,
I think it's stuck.
Can anyone switch the next slide?
Thank you.
No. This one, yes, great. This is what's coming out from, what's the outcome from one survey round. This is mainly about the current situation and the future view. It's more optimistically in February than in the previous month, as we see here. So what we did, so over here, we are asking, how do you feel the situation? What is it all about? And how do you think the future is? And now, when we are now get to the next slide. This is quite interesting, okay. What we see here is, do we have the next, I think you can see, oh, it's animated. So what we see is, over here within the last 20 years, it's the question of how is the sales climate in the German travel market. And you see it's written by the assessment of the current situation in black. It's the expectation for turnover and success. It's the blue one. And then in a sum of this, we have the tourism sales index, sales climate index. And now if we switch a little bit, because I think there are coming some informations, this is exactly showing what happened in the industry when we are looking back to 2008. We see this breakdown in 2008 after insolvency of the Lehman Brothers Bank. Then we see the next one, what happened in the European and then specifically in the German market. We see what happened in 2016. There was a trial of a military coup in Turkey and also some terrorist attacks in the entire Arabian world. This is exactly what you see in this kind of index. And then what we see then is over here, this breakdown was the insolvency of Thomas Cook. And then we cut into the period of Corona. This is a long, sad situation, and we never had this kind of figures like we see here. And what you see is getting more and more volatile. So after 2023, we had the a gradual lifting of travel restrictions worldwide, but you see it's still very bumpy, I would say. So it's getting very up, but it's also falling down. So as you see, 20 years of tourism industry in the German market is quite well shown in this index. Stephen, I think now it's your part again.
Thank you. So we'll shift gears and look at this final section, which is the early indicators and long-term forecasts, and how we think about the sort of trends that we're seeing impacting the way travel will move forward. I decided to bring in some of our travel forecast model data, and basically what that is, it's a model that takes WTO travel flows in and out of a destination. We synthesize that data, standardize it, and then we apply a sort of packet of macroeconomic indicators, apply that to those flows, and understand how they're likely to impact those flows over the coming 5 years. And so that is all neatly wrapped up in this little chart here on the left. Good news, obviously, we already said that overall travel sales have basically reached those 2019 spending levels, and you can just see that upward trajectory as it's moving through 2029. That means 2025, so this year, by the end of the year, we'll have reached $5.5 trillion in total spending. And that's a combination of inbound travel spending and domestic travel spending. And what it also means is over the next 5 years, we're adding over $1 trillion in value. That's a huge sum of money that's added on top of what we already achieved by 2019. So that's over the next 5 years, adding $1 trillion in value. That's a lot of money up for grabs effectively for any destinations and tour operators who are navigating these trends well. This is a snapshot of the leading destinations in terms of spend, as I mentioned, in 2025. So you can see some sort of, it's a little bit hard to see actually in the colors, but some classic destinations, large markets like the US and China are some of the leaders there. That's not a huge surprise given the size of those markets, of course, but we'll see some interesting thing on the next slide about that. Obviously, the classic destinations within Europe, especially along the Mediterranean, remain very important to the inbound spend and domestic tourism spend. And as well as some in Asia. A notable kind of new entry here is Saudi Arabia. I'm sure you've walked by the Saudi Arabia booth here at ITB and have seen just the amount of money and investment that's going into building out that market as a tourism destination. And it's starting to show up in the data now. That I think it's, 12th place it looks like in terms of leading destinations and total spend worldwide. That's a significant leap for Saudi Arabia as it's been opening that market and sort of maturing its tourism infrastructure. Now, if we, on my final slide here, take a look at the markets that are actually leading growth over the next 5 years, that notable point about China and the US is valid because they're also, not only are they the largest markets, some of the largest markets, they're also generating the most new value over the next 5 years. And that's a pretty important thing to understand. Because they're already mature sort of from an infrastructure perspective. But what we're seeing is these two markets in particular, we talked, especially in China, we talked a lot about revenge travel over the last couple of years of consumers finally being able in China to get out as that market was opening up after the end of the pandemic. But revenge travel is a thing of the past now. We're sort of maturing again back into growth. And so now what consumers in these markets are faced on, again, with a lot of pricing pressure that we just talked about, is now tourism starting to be targeted at those sort of middle and higher income consumers who can really afford that. So there's value creation, value being added per trip in these markets, and we're starting to see that in the data. Not only large growth, but sort of growth over time. The other kind of notable thing here is that we're looking at lots of growth in Southeast Asia and South Asia with India. This is a really interesting region because there's a lot of intra-regional travel happening here. That happened because of the pandemic, basically, and a lot of restrictions being made about long-haul travel at the time. And it reflects also the sort of slow travel element that we talked about. Discovering your own backyard, being willing to uncover some of the really unique things about where you live. And so a lot of the intra-regional travel is making a huge impact as those markets and the tourism offerings there are starting to mature. And the buying power is growing there as well. So those are another kind of standout space.
Yes, and now and only. There should be a jingle now because I think what we are doing now, and I'm very happy to have you here, we are showing and we are celebrating, I would say, the birth of a next index. It's a cooperation of Fried & Partner and the ITB, and I guess most of you sitting now here are coming from the Terrell Bayer circle, and therefore I'm very thankful that all of you joined us, helping us to explain and to work on this index, and we are going to have establish the index by today. Now, if you can very quickly show a little bit, what are we doing since 1 year? We have quarterly surveys since 2 years, since 2023, when we discussed with ITB. Is there anything the industry would help very much? And I think it's something like a very, very early indicator about how is the business running. And so we were started with a quarterly survey in cooperation with the ITB. It captures trends and sentiments in the global travel procurement market. It's a very early indicator. The procurement itself is already quite early. How are we suggesting and how are we thinking is the business running within the next few months, therefore the procurement. And then we have the assessment of the current procurement situation and the future expectations. And you remember it's a kind of a climate index like we had before. And I think the very interesting point will be in the next few years that when we see how the index is running. Now you can go on this slide already. I have also to step it a little bit forward. So what you see here is what we see from the last index surveys we did. So since 2024, 25, we see the index is slightly below 100. So at the moment, the situation is felt like this. And we're asking in the last 6 months compared to previous year, the volume of orders has so increased or not changed and decreased. And this is quite interesting, as you see first time over here. The increasing is falling a little bit compared to the last November 24 survey. In the next question, we be asking the last month compared to previous year to share the fixed purchases. Here we have also a slight decrease, and we have a little bit more on this side not changed. And then we have in the last 6 months compared to previous year to contracting expenses has increased or decreased. And this is what we now figure out, what we now get together in the index. And when you can switch one more, this is once more the same questions, but more like to the future expectations. So it's the positive market development, what we see over here. And then what we will establish now, year by year and quarter by quarter, you can show on the end. This is exactly the current situation. It's the global travel buyer index. It's now with a 93. It's a little bit slow, a little bit down, but in generally we see that we have an instrument for the industry that is expecting, that's showing how the expectations are and how the business is running. And it's more than a gut feeling. It's more like we are working here with real opinions from experts, and then I see many of you over here, and so therefore happy to have you here. May I invite you in name of the ITB for a little cocktail, for come together in front of the lounge. It's over of the speakers lounge. It's just 50 meters, no, 20 meters from here. On the left side, it's the hall 7-1A, and there we will meet together to have a glass of sparkling water, champagne, I don't know, whatever you like, we like. Thank you very much. This, yes, and Marianna, please.
So first of all, a huge thank you to the two gentlemen. The last session of the day. So everybody who's with us until the end, I think, gained some very valuable insights, and it was very clear, and thank you for the energy up until the very end. Huge thank you to our audience. Again, the invitation to join us for a quick drink and get-together, and I wish all of you a lovely evening and a wonderful day tomorrow. So goodbye, everybody, and see you very soon. Bye.